You can go through it slowly if you want to, so
That's
it
my
works well.
thought, right? Okay, good. Okay, so we are officially recording. I'm just going to shoot that out now. And thank you everybody for coming to our little water polo timekeeping tutorial. With this video, we're going to look at the first 3 minutes of I think it's actually 2012, so this is wrong, Women's Olympic game, but 2012, it's got to be at least 10 years old if they're going to put it on YouTube. First, we're going to go through, I've shared with everybody, and I'll put in the YouTube comments, this slide deck that I made. Right on the title page, if you've got the link open, if you click that link, it should open up the match in question. Just because I want to make sure everybody's, sorry, I want to make
If
sure
you want to
everybody
ace
can
your
at
paper,
least reach
download
the
Grammarly.
match.
Are
You know,
you?
as Nan said, like,
Me?
and this was true for me, some of us haven't even watched a water polo game. We don't even know the rules of water polo. So to be able to just watch a water polo game is a good way to get started. This video is, however, an hour and 17 minutes long. We are not spending that much time here together today. I hope we're only like 15 minutes together. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but I'm going to do that after I go forward a couple slides. Any questions so far? And please do feel free to interrupt with questions. It's that type of training. Okay, so right off the bat, I threw in a slide in there that's like, if you can't even stay on the phone any longer, you need to run. I recommend a completely different YouTube video from our friends. I don't know if we know this team. This is a youth team, but it's a Toronto water polo team, and it's a very well-produced video that teaches you how to be a timekeeper. So, and it's only like 17 minutes long, so they've already chopped an hour off. They do use our same equipment. This is literally the exact same device we're going to be using. So it's a great, and the way she's got her fingers are what I'm about to tell you is pretty much 90% of what you'll be doing if you help us time keep. So check out this awesome YouTube video from the Maverick team in Toronto, which does a great job teaching you how to time keep if you don't have more time. That said, hopefully you can reach this 2012 Olympic Games. I think it's women's gold match, Spain versus USA. You can see I've got dyslexic a couple of places. I called it 2021. All I'm calling out here is something simple but that might confuse, which is there's a difference between the video timestamp, right? Sometimes I might send you a link that points at 4 minutes and 36 seconds into the video versus the game clock, which is in an Olympic match, in a proper water polo match, quarters are 8 minutes long. And so you're looking in the upper left of the video to see the game clock, which might be ticking down slowly, right? A YouTube timestamp ticks up. Game clocks in water polo, key point, they tick down. And most events, I'm going to direct your attention, like use the game clock, because you'll see the timestamp in the upper left, you'll watch the event happen, and you'll get what I mean. Also, game clock is what your device is going to be telling you if you're a timekeeper. And as Steph saw at practice last night, the timestamp is, the game clock timestamp is what the secretary writes down. Now, the secretary is a different role. I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed. We're talking just about timekeeping today. But the timekeeper and the secretary work together, and they need to be on the same page as far as what is the game clock. When I mention the game clock, I put the time in square brackets to distinguish it from the YouTube time. And when I mention the YouTube time, I try to give you a YouTube timestamp that's like 1 or 2 seconds before the event I'm trying to draw your attention to, so you can get some context, right? I didn't want to land you right when the whistle gets blown. I want you to get a couple of seconds of context to understand what happens. If you want, this slide also includes a link to an annotated version of the video. So it's this third-party service that does this sort of free, give me a YouTube link and you can add all sorts of annotations on it. I did that, and I went a lot further than like the first couple minutes. I went pretty far. So if you, it's a good way to, on your own time, you click on it, it takes you right to that YouTube timestamp I wanted it to, and down at the bottom it gives you the notes that I'm trying to draw your attention to what you would be doing. Like I said, I annotated the first full 3 minutes of the game. Whereas the presentation we're going to watch, I think I only look at maybe the first minute or two. Before I go further, any questions on that? That's just some context. Okay, real quick, let's look at what you'll be operating. When you're the timekeeper, you're looking at something like what I've got on my screen, and I just want to talk about a few parts that should stick out. First of all, we're not going to have 8-minute quarters or 8-minute periods in our tournament in 2 weeks, the Denver Squids Rocky Mountain Oyster Fest. However, in this training, we're looking at an Olympic game, and real games are 8 minutes long. And so this clock, this 8 minutes here represents how much time is left in the quarter, also known as the game clock. Okay, so keep your eyes on that. You'll see in the future slides how I update it to reflect what the game clock is for key events in this Olympic match. Below that, we see the score. On the left, I'm always going to put the white team, or the team with the white caps. On the right, I'm going to put the team with the dark caps. In the game that we're about to watch, Spain is wearing white, USA is wearing blue or dark, and that'll be very clear, easy to distinguish them. In our tournament, our squid colors are pink and blue, so we've got white caps, but our dark caps are pink. So just be aware, that's why I use the word dark. In most cases, I'm trying to keep it generic. You might see me use the word B for blue to represent dark. Use either of those two letters, D or B, and you'll be fine. I'll talk through the rest of these little lines, and then I'll pause for questions. If you, like Steph or Jamie, used the timekeeping equipment last night, you will have seen a lot more buttons than what are being shown on my screen right now. That's because I've sort of taped off, and I will be doing this starting tomorrow's practice, taping off certain buttons that you should never need to have to press. So this rectangle here in the timer zone represents tape. This rectangle here in the shot clock zone represents tape. I taped off this entire upside down U thing. Everything you see on my screen now are the buttons you need to concern yourself with. You might need to press buttons that are under the tape, but you probably shouldn't need to. Okay? And then this last comment here is just telling you, like that video that I paused it, just at the right point, look at where her two fingers are. One is on this start-stop button. One is on the reset shot clock button. That is exactly where my two lines are pointing here in this slide. And we sort of realized over the last two squid practices, those are the buttons you're going to be pressing about 90% of the time. I'm not sure I'd recommend using one hand for both. I like one hand on start-stop and one hand on reset shot clock. But the idea of having one hand on both is that those are the main two buttons you'll be pressing, and I definitely agree with that. The reasons you're going to be pressing one or the other are different, which is why for my brain, I need two different fingers on each button. We'll talk about the reasons, and I'm going to kind of talk about the reasons by way of just diving into the game rather than the kind of theoretical, press this button when. But any questions on this layout of the timekeeping equipment? We haven't talked about what every button does, but I think over the course of this presentation we will. Or if you have questions, jot them down, make sure to ask them, because I'm sure they'll be enlightening for other folks. All right, so next slide. Again, a reminder, here I've highlighted those two buttons again, and I'm reminding you that next to your timekeeping equipment, I've taped a laminated cheat sheet that reminds you when to press each button. I don't expect you all to read it, but I do expect if you're, if you've forgotten something, then you should take a look at the cheat sheet. Because while it should be only one page, it should tell you things like when to press the start button or the stop button, or when to press the reset shot clock button. Remember, these two buttons representing about 90% of what you're doing. So use the cheat sheet. There's the sort of written cheat sheet, and then there's the annotated, like, here's the anatomy of what you're looking at cheat sheet, which is also laminated and taped right next to it. So if you need this, you should find it right next to your timekeeping equipment. If you give yourself 10 minutes to just read it in advance, I hope that it kind of reminds you of some of the basics. But neither of those are what I want to do today. The rest of this presentation are going to be focusing on the game. So let's pretend we're sitting at the timekeeping equipment right now, and we're getting set up for this Spain versus USA match that's about to start. So first of all, we set the period. So I've highlighted this button. I think if I press, let me go back. There we go. See, it spins. Excessive PowerPoint animation for the win. This button will toggle these dots. There are 4 dots. Each time you press the button, a new dot lights up. You light up all 4 and you press the button, then all of them disappear. You press the button again and the first lights up. So you just keep going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The point is, keep pressing the button until there are as many dots as the period that you're currently on. And if we're starting in the current period or the current quarter, there should just be 1 dot. So yesterday I think I made Steph and Jamie, when they sat down for a fresh scrimmage, reset that at the first period. Of course, when you enter the second period, you're going to bump that up, third period, fourth period, and so on. Let's not worry about what happens if you go into overtime, etc. But that one's a pretty important one because it reminds, frankly, it reminds you just as much as it reminds the players which quarter are they in, right? How much longer do they have to look forward to this game? Any questions on that?
Yeah.
Okay, that one's pretty straight. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, please. Questions are good.
Yeah, one of the things with periods, is there like a set time to expect? Or is it just goes until?
Well, let me clarify. When you say set time, there is certainly a time for how long the periods will last, and that's something that I should have taken care of at the tournament. I should have taken care of before anyone even reaches the timekeeping equipment. And I would like to talk about it if that's what you mean a little bit, but the answer to your question then is it's what's under this piece of tape here on this timer block. In other words, if I lifted this piece of tape up, we would see options to increase period length by a minute and decrease it by a minute, or increase it by a second and decrease it by a second. The idea, though, is, if I understood your question, I should have done that before the tournament, right, or the morning of each day of the tournament. And remember, what I'm going to set it to is not 8 minutes. Anyone remember what our tournament
6
is?
minutes.
That's right, just 6 minutes. So good question, like, will it be set? And yes, it should have been set by me, but that doesn't preclude y'all might need to use it. And if you do, we're going to have to talk about that in person probably at the tournament, right? You got to rip off the tape, go boop, 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 and then cover it back up again.
But at the start of the new quarter, with you having set it at 6 minutes, if you press the reset time, it'll start at 6, right?
Yes. So that's the beauty of it, is that I should do it in advance, and if I do my job properly and no one else like F's it up, then this button here, while we're not talking about it today because we're not even going to get to the second quarter of this game, Jamie's exactly right. This button is what you press exactly 4 times, I guess, or 3, over the course of the thing. This will reset it back to the 6 minutes in our case, or for these folks, 8 minutes for this Olympic game. And the fact that it goes back to the 6 minutes or the 8 minutes or whatever it is on me, right? That I set it up properly in the first place. It has some memory of what I set it to until that button is pressed for the first time. So, great question.
So yeah, I mean, and I know last training you said that like really to focus on the referee a lot of the times. So
Exactly.
Okay, so that's like still super important. Okay.
It is. And this one, in fact, while it's a really important question, I'm glad we've established it, right? Because this sets what should have been set up before you get there, and what you will have to do once each period is press this button. The next slide, I think, will show us what Nan just said, which is the rule of thumb. Just pay attention to the ref. And in fact, Jamie had this insight. You can almost just listen to the ref for the sake of pressing this start-stop button. So let me explain what I mean. This person just set up their timekeeping equipment, and they start the first quarter, Spain versus USA. Remember, the beginning of every quarter in water polo is kicked off with a swim-off. So players start at either end of the pool, and they swim towards the center, where the ref throws a ball, hopefully right in the center. And whoever's fastest, or they work with their teammates to get the ball, gets possession. That's the first event where you're going to react. So I've gone forward to the next slide here, and I'm going to go back just to show you how the slides changed. Okay, all I'm doing is advertising and showing you in the bottom left of what would happen if you click this YouTube link. So here's the timestamps I was talking about, just to give you some reference. Of course, what does the square bracket signify? Game clock, how much time is left in the quarter. And that clock hasn't started yet. You might think when they start swimming, then time starts ticking down. Turns out that's not true. The clock starts at the beginning of the quarter when? What am I showing in this video? When somebody actually gets possession after the swim off. And in this video, this is literally from the Spain and USA game. This is Spain on loop. This is Whitecaps, Spain, grabbing the ball after the swim off and tossing it back to her tee. So she's got full control of the ball, which means I'm going to press which button? The start-stop button. Now, real quick note on start-stop. It is just one button, but it has, just like your sort of a play-pause button on a MP3 player, it has a dual purpose depending on whether the music's playing or pausing. Before anybody won the swim-off, time is not counting down. The moment Spain wins the the swim-off, I press start-stop. This little icon I've used here is purely for your benefit, right? To tell you that by pressing this button, you are doing which of the two? You are starting the clock. I also put this little yellow dot here that is just for your benefit, that is not on the timekeeping equipment, just to signify that the white team ended up getting the ball. The only other thing I'm going to point out is that the game clock and the shot clock, they stay in sync with each other. So when you start, you press just this button, it's going to start both of them together. Before I go, the next two slides literally illustrate that, what happens after you press start. But does anyone have questions on this concept? All right, so Spain wins the swim-off. Doesn't matter who wins it, the moment someone clearly has control. Sometimes there's a struggle for control. Usually wait until one team clearly has control, and we would press start. And what would happen at that point is the clocks start ticking down, right? Obviously. So now the game clock says 7 minutes and 59 seconds, right? That's what this thing says here. And the shot clock likewise counts down with the game clock. So 1 second later, they would say 7 minutes and 58 seconds and 28 seconds on the shot clock, right? That's it. That's the first major event where you have to react. Pressing the start button at the beginning of a quarter happens when what? Somebody
gains position.
That's right. Gains control, wins the swim off, however you want to put it. Make sense? Now I'm jumping ahead a little bit. This slideshow gets to just elide over 20 seconds of time at a time. So when I jump ahead, I've gone to 7 minutes and 49 seconds in the game clock. Remember, I've given you the YouTube timestamp. You should be able to click my little YouTube link, and it will pop it right open to 4 minutes and 55 seconds. About 2 seconds before what's about to happen happens. And what happens is, you might not be able to hear my screen, but hearing is very important. If you could hear my screen or my video, you would have heard the referee whistle. And this goes back to Nan's point and to Jamie's point. Where is it? If you're watching my slide, I literally put the sound of a whistle into the slide itself. So it goes, brrr. And I've shown you what the referee does when they blow that whistle. And in the upper left, I've showed you kind of why they blow the whistle, but that's really not important, right? Back to Nan's point, back to Jamie's point, we could be blind. We could not be looking at the pool. And if we heard that whistle, what we would know is that it signifies an ordinary foul. We don't need to know what the player did that was the ordinary foul, right? We just know the ref is our source of truth. The ref blew the whistle. So what do? This is a rule of thumb. When you hear the whistle, press stop. I know it's a start-stop button, right? But I'm calling it stop now because the presumption is if you hear a whistle, it must have been playing a second ago. It must have been started a second ago. So if you've heard the whistle, what you're doing now is stopping the clock. And it's as simple as that. I could go into like what's an ordinary foul, but that's not that important, right? That's the beauty of timekeeping is you don't need to know the rules per se. All you need to know is that a foul results in a whistle, and a whistle results in you stopping. Now what stopping does is it freezes 7 minutes and 49 seconds up here, and it freezes their shot clock at 19 seconds until you decide to resume or press start again. And that'll be on our next slide. Sorry, my cat is very needy right now. But any questions on this? If you hear a whistle, stop it. And I put this bright pink thing in here to signify the audio sensation that you'll hear. It's funny, last night I was almost discouraging people from watching the game. Of course you should watch the game, but you're tempted sometimes when you're watching the game to be the referee yourself, right? You might think that was a foul when the referee didn't actually call one. Or you might think that wasn't a foul and the referee actually did call one. So I encourage people to use their ears first, right? And if they hear that whistle, of course the referee is who decides the game, even if they made a mistake. So you stop the clock when you hear the referee whistle. And if that's when you stop it, when do you start it again? Any questions on stopping? And we're almost 30 minutes in, and I think we're halfway through our slides, so we're doing actually pretty good.
So real quick with stopping, I mean, is the next, I should just actually wait, but I'm curious, you're going to go over like reset the shot clock and stuff like that?
I was.
If it's, okay.
Yeah,
I might just be getting ahead.
Well, but let's separate. It's a good point because what we're going to do is separate an ordinary foul. This is a key point, right? Because what I just heard was, what about resetting the shot clock? Like, does the foul result in resetting the shot clock? This is where it's important to listen and listen carefully because one whistle signifies an ordinary foul, and all that results in, skipping to the next side, is stopping the clock and then restarting it after the player or the team that was fouled does something called putting the ball into play. Steph, you saw me kind of roll my eyes with you last night. This one's just hard because what we want to do is, like Nan said, rely on the ref as the source of truth. So I'd like for the referee to signify for me when the ball is put into play. I'm hopeful at our tournament our ref will be that good. Let me go back and explain what I mean. I do have to dive into the rules a little bit. When you are fouled, your team gets the ball for a free throw. You are supposed to take that free throw without undue delay. Definitely written by a lawyer, right? But nobody knows what that means, without undue delay. Turns out, rule of thumb, it's about 3 seconds. But that's up to the referee. That's not really up to us. So what we hope to see is this. Notice how the referee in my video here on the screen, she's putting her arm up. She gestures toward the direction the ball is going. That's where we do want to use our eyeballs. Because if she was pointing the other way, the ball will reverse the direction, and then apparently whatever happened is something different, i.e. the other team committed the foul, and to Nan's point, we would have at least one extra step to do here. But the referee is pointing in the direction of the ball, the direction that the white team is taking the ball, to say the white team was fouled, the white team gets the ball, and it is now time for the white team to take their free throw. What a referee should do, this is what I'm saying, is leave their arm up until that free throw is taken, and then drop their arm. And in dropping their arm, what they're signifying to us is it is now time for us, the timekeepers, to press start again. Right? What that's called is putting the ball into play. You know, Jamie and Steph, I've talked to you guys. I encourage us to have a very visible separation of the hand and the ball. That's what the rules say, because that makes it very unambiguous when you put the ball back into play, which is helpful for the referee, it's helpful for the timekeepers, etc. And now, speaking to you all as timekeepers, how do you know if the ball is put back into play? First of all, hopefully a referee signal it. If you watch that arm and they keep it erect until they drop it, when it seems like the person passes the ball, please use the ref. If the ref is lazy, they go going that way and they just drop their hand right away, but the player hasn't even reached the ball. Wait for the player to reach the ball. We never penalize anybody when they're going to when the ball bounced off somewhere and they're going to reach it. Once they've got it solidly in their control, we give them about 3 seconds. Someone made the point like, yeah, but it's still not your call to say 3 seconds and you're assuming they put the ball back into play after 3 seconds. It's like, don't worry, the referee would whistle if they took too long to put the ball back into play. So let me bring this all back to a very simple point into Nan's question. When you see the referee signal, or you see a player pass, like this video I'm showing on my screen, you know the ball has been put back into play, and that means you can start again. Now, with this particular event, what kind of foul was it? There's 2 fouls, an ordinary foul and an exclusion foul. This was just an ordinary foul. It was just one whistle, and that's why the only thing we're going to be doing is stopping the clock and starting it again. We are not resetting any shot clock at all. This is what you're going to be doing about 70% of the time because ordinary fouls in water polo are very, very common. Very, very common. You're not penalized if you rack up 100 ordinary fouls. That's fine. In fact, if you watch this game, you'll see there's about 4 ordinary fouls before anybody even tries to take a shot. That's the nature of the sport. So you're going to hear a lot of whistles. And with this Olympic match in particular, what you're going to see is there's very little delay, not even 3 seconds. This player gets fouled, they hear the whistle, they know they've got a free throw, and a good water polo player is going to know who they're throwing it to. You see she throws it within only about 1 or 2 seconds of real clock time passing. And so you're going to want to pay attention. In our tournament, I think we're going to take a little longer. We're a little more amateurish than these women pros, but you're going to want to pay attention, okay, to press that start button again. Does this make sense? Go ahead.
There would be one ordinary foul where you'd press both. Let's say ball under. That's an ordinary foul, but it changes direction.
Very good, very good, very good. So what we talked about is when to press start stop. What I want to clarify is Jamie described an ordinary foul that might be the offensive team's foul. What we're looking at here in this little video is the most common type of foul you're going to see, which is the defense getting a little handsy, literally hands on the offensive player, and it causes a foul. It's very, very common. It's probably about 60% of all fouls, period. However, that doesn't mean the offense can't commit a foul. Jamie described a foul that the offensive team, Spain in this case, the Whitecaps, could have committed. He described a foul called ball under. If you're getting tackled by defense, you are not allowed to take the ball under the water. If Spain had done that in this case, and the U.S. hadn't fouled them, it would be a foul, but what's the key point here? And this will illustrate the difference. Jamie answered this question. Which way would the ref point? Would the ref point the way she's pointing in my little video here?
Reverse.
Reverse, right? She would be pointing in the opposite direction to signify that was a foul, and the people who will benefit from that foul are the team going in this direction, right? The blue caps. So I say listen first, use your ears first, even before watching with your eyeballs. But of course you gotta watch with your eyeballs second, right? Because to Jamie's point, which way the referee points, you might get caught by surprise. Maybe Spain just committed a ball under. That is an ordinary foul, just like Jamie said. You would have heard the exact same thing. And just so you're not scared or confused, you would have done the same thing with the start-stop. Let me be clear. Right? A foul is a foul is a foul. I draw your attention to that sound because if you hear it, I want you to press that button. If there's anything I leave you with tonight, hear a foul, press start stop. Even on a ball under, you would have done the same thing. Because what would have happened is the white team took the ball under, the foul, you stop it. Now we need time for the blue team to get to the ball, get control of it, and take their free throw. Once they take their free throw, you could have start stopped. The only difference would have been in that case, you would have also done what third thing? Jamie, you said it?
Reset the shot clock.
That's right, and I don't have that highlighted in this case because that's not what happened, but you would have pressed that second button, right? Your fingers are on those 2 buttons. You would have pressed the second button to reset the shot clock. So what? A lot of this is intuitive when you think about it. Why? Because the blue team just got possession of the ball. They deserve a fresh shot clock. Right? In the case of the theoretical case we're describing of a ball under on white. So you would have also reset the shot clock. However, since that's not what happened, what I want to impress on you is you don't always reset the shot clock. You wouldn't be giving the white team a brand new fresh shot clock in an ordinary foul case. Make sense? Good question, Jamie.
Oh.
And when to resume, yeah?
So,
Okay.
and it's just it's the same whistle and everything. You just have to be mindful of where they point.
That's right. You want to be mindful of where they point. And then we'll talk about a different type of whistle. Maybe the only other whistle pattern you'll need to hear in this case. It brings it up to the next level of foul.
Gotcha.
And we'll talk about what happens there. But yeah, listen, for the one whistle signifies ordinary foul. just start, stop, unless it's a change of direction. So I guess that's the point Jamie's making, right? Unless they switch back in the other direction. Very good. Make sense? So since this player took the free throw, presumably the ref dropped her arm to signify the ball's back in play. What happens? We press start, so stuff starts ticking down, right? We're now at 7 minutes and 48 seconds, 18 seconds on the shot clock. What happens next? 8 seconds later, another ordinary foul, if you watch this game. Part of the reason I like to do this is not just to teach you with a real game, but to understand how frequently some of these events happen in a real game. Andy was very keen to say the reset shot clock is probably the most popular thing. When I watch a game like this, it's clear to me that ordinary fouls result in stopping and starting a lot more. So here, not 8 seconds later, another ordinary foul. Ref does the exact same thing. One whistle blow, one arm pointing in the right direction. You press that stop button. Muscle memory. You hear that whistle, you press that stop button. Any questions? Same exact reason as before, same event as before, it just happened to happen again 8 seconds later. Any questions?
How common are ball unders? Are they just as common as like it's going to be like every 8 seconds, or it just depends on the team?
Ball unders are more, so this type of a foul is, I want to say, as common in amateurs and in pros, because this type of a foul is what you would expect defense to do. Go get that damn ball, right? Like, be aggressive, get the ball, play good defense, whatever you would call it. And in doing that, sometimes you risk breaking the rules that amount to an ordinary foul. A ball under, I would say, is more of an amateurish move. And not to, I'm playing in our tournament next week too, like I'll do it every once in a while. It's something that you can avoid. You should have figured something else out. It's something that some beginners are very tempted to do, right? I'm defending the ball, I'll keep it away from you. If I bring it underwater, I'll keep it away from you, but it's just never gonna work in your favor. So hopefully we don't see ball unders as frequently as we do see just ordinary fouls, as in playing hard defense. Does that answer your question? That's a good question.
It does. It does help a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So ball unders. In fact, there are certain types of fouls that I separate out that way. Fouls that you sort of want to cause, i.e., these types that we're looking at, versus fouls that your team's going to give you stink eye if you're doing too much of them, like bringing the ball under or. Offense could, in fact, here's another reason offense could commit a foul. Maybe the player didn't pull the ball under, but you are not allowed to push or push off of a player who's not holding the ball. And defense is, of course, not holding the ball. So if the white cap player tried to push away the blue cap player, that could be construed as a foul. And what would we hear? A whistle. And since it was offense that committed the foul, what would we see? The arm would be pointed in the other direction. So the steps we would take would be the same as the ball under, right? And would be the same as any foul. First, we stop the clock. That's why the main thing I want to condition you to do, you hear a whistle, stop the clock. But since the ball changed directions, we would have done that one extra step, which is press, reset shot clock. Like I said, I don't think those types of fouls happen more in the pro realm, right? Players are just experienced enough to know not to do that. Otherwise, they sabotage their team's chance at scoring a goal. But the defense kind of a foul, they just happen over and over again. Because why not, right? Why not? Like, I'm not being penalized for it. I'm not going to be kicked out of the game. I should play hard defense. So I think at an Olympic level, I'm not surprised this is what we see. Great question there on like an ordinary foul committed by defense versus a less common, I'll call it, mess up kind of a foul, often committed by offense. Any other questions? Okay. Starting again is the same rules as before. If you see that player pass the ball, this is the video where that player clearly passed the ball. Or what we prefer to see, the referee keeps her arm up until she interprets that the player has passed the ball, then the referee drops her arm, means the ball is put back into play, and so you would press start again on the clock. Then it starts counting down. I just made an interesting side note here that if all my math is correct, Spain has less than 9 seconds to take their shot. The significance of a shot clock is like any sport you might be familiar with. If you don't shoot by then, you've committed a foul. Your team has committed a foul, and that's also a turnover. But all I'm doing here is pointing out that hasn't happened yet, but Spain is now in risk of having it happen. And if you listen to the announcers in the YouTube video, you'll hear they make the same comment. Brief comment on the Olympic format. I hate how they do this. Notice how they put the game clock right up there, very clear. The scores right up there, just like your timekeeping equipment would show. They even show who's white and who's dark, the game clock, which quarter you're in. Nowhere here is the shot clock. It's frustrating to me, but apparently Olympic stuff, they don't show you the shot clock until there's only 5 seconds left in the shot clock. So you might notice, and if you watch closely, in these remaining like 4 seconds, the shot clock briefly appears before Spain decides to make their move, and it immediately disappears again. Which we'll
Just
see.
another quick question.
Please?
Is that like really tight? Like, I guess on a professional level, it probably doesn't feel that tight, but 5 seconds seems like such a fast,
It does.
especially in the water.
I know.
Like,
I know, that's why I wish I saw the shot clock longer as a side comment on, hey, Olympic people, if you're listening to me, please put the shot clock up the whole time. I'd like to, because, I mean, Nan's right? Your strategy changes whether you're in 30 seconds, 20 seconds, or 10 seconds. Jamie and Steph, what do we say when it reaches 10 seconds? Sometimes people call out a color. What color do they say? Yellow, I think, is what you might hear, like Will shout in the pool. That's his way of saying, hey, we got 10 seconds left. I usually prefer the explicit number, but you take what you can get. And to Nan's point, that might change what you do. Making sure nobody's joining here. So, to answer Nan's question, yeah, it's tight, but on the other hand, you only need about 1 second to make a roll. So, it's not that tight, right? Plus, go ahead.
I think in our games with more amateurs, we have a lot tougher time taking shots.
Yes, so we're not as aware of the shot clock.
There may well be more turnovers that way.
That's right. So that's good. Let me reiterate what Jamie said. Sorry to talk over you, Jamie. 2 things are true, I think. At least 2 things. More amateurish game that we play. So that means, number one, sometimes some of our players aren't even aware of the shot clock, right? We don't scrimmage or practice with one. We don't count in our heads when we're refereeing in those cases. So sometimes it's 40 seconds later and that team still has the ball and they're dicking around and there's no penalty on them. So some players from our team and others may not even be aware there's a shot clock. And then Jamie's more nuanced point, sometimes they are aware, they just struggle to get the shot by then. And if you haven't taken the shot by the time that shot clock reaches 0, this is important. I think Steph was surprised by this, as anyone would be. This equipment, the equipment right in front of you, will emit a large, loud buzz, or burr, or whatever you want to call it. We don't expect the referee to blow that whistle. Your equipment issues that whistle because your equipment is the clock. That is a foul. That is, if that were to happen at this Olympic level, we don't see it happen. Spain gets their shit together. Most teams would get their shit together. Even if they can't shoot, they're going to probably do what's called, I think Eli calls it dumping. So you throw the ball, not at the goal, because you don't think you have any chance of making a goal, but like in the furthest opposite corner as you book it back to your side of the pool, right? So seldom does it actually happen that a professional team is caught with an expired shot clock. However, during our tournament, I guarantee it'll happen. Don't be shocked when your thing is very loud. It startles me every time, but that's necessary because the players in the pool have a hard time hearing, and they've got those things over their ears. And what that signifies is the referee will know exactly what that means. It's not on you to start directing players. The referee will then say what? Ball's going this way. Blue ball now because white screwed up their chance. That would be and we're going into theoretical land here, but that would be a foul. You would press stop to let the blue team get control of the ball. Once they had control of the ball, you would wait for them to make a free throw, and then you would press start. And since it was a turnover, you would press reset shot clock, right? What we just discussed was entirely theoretical. It doesn't happen here, but that's what you would do. That's a great point.
Let's use the example of dumping. So someone dumps it in the corner.
Yeah, like let's say there's only 2 seconds.
The shot clock goes off. You don't restart the shot clock until the person actually gets over there to the corner?
Yeah, so you can restart the shot clock prematurely as long as you're going to restart it again later. So let's go with what Jamie described. We're still in hypothetical land here, right? Let's say there's like 2 seconds left and Spain decides to dump it. Just because Spain dumped it, are you going to press any button? No. You haven't heard a whistle. right? The ball hasn't strictly turned over yet. So after 2 seconds, your little whistle may sound, that's okay. But what that signifies is now it's the US's turn. It's the dart ball's turn. So what Jamie said is key. At some point, you gotta give US a fresh shot clock, right? Plain and simple. I think we can all agree, like, it's their turn now. They get a new shot clock. What we might quibble about is, should you reset the shot clock immediately? Or should you reset it when they get control of the ball and they take the pass? Here's my statement. You always need to do it at the latter. Therefore, it doesn't really matter if you do it at the former. Does that make sense? You can reset it to 30, let 2 seconds tick down on it, and finally the US swimmer managed to reach that corner where they dumped the ball. Because they didn't have that ball in the interim, we're not going to penalize them for the dumping, right? We reset shot clock once they've gotten possession of the ball again. So if you did it before or not, doesn't really matter. You're back up to a fresh 30 seconds once a blue player got control of the ball. Does that make sense just as a philosophy? Don't penalize teams.
So
Go ahead.
you wouldn't stop it at all in that case?
Very good. I wouldn't stop it at all in that case. No, I wouldn't. I would have heard the loud buzz for my equipment. Technically, I don't know if I would have interpreted that as a foul. They did dump the ball, right? They didn't hold on to the ball until the clock buzzed. They got rid of it. So I probably wouldn't stop the clock. No, I'd let the blue team go chase it, but I would reset them and give them a fresh shot clock once they got control of that ball. Otherwise, let's say it took them 7 seconds to even reach the ball, right? Now, the blue team only has 23 seconds, and they're starting with the ball all the way over in their corner. So the key thing is not so much whether we start and stop on the shot clock expiring, but making sure that the team that's about to get the ball gets a fresh 30 seconds. If the shot clock's counting down in that time, I wouldn't worry that much. The main thing, if you're going to get bitched out by teams, this is important because I don't want anyone to feel like they're like, oh my god, who's going to come shout at me? The people who get most vocal are, as you might imagine, the teams or the players on the teams. And if you're going to err on the side of anything, I would err on the side of not pressing a button, like giving teams more time, if that makes sense. So, in other words, not like prematurely going like, oh, I need to stop it right when I hear that whistle. Like, give your brain a chance to react, and that's okay. In general, it's especially important to delay before you press play again rather than before you press stop. Because nobody's going to bitch at you for like giving the team with the ball more time. Whereas if the team with the ball feels like they're shortchanged, they will not give you a moment's rest. Does that make sense?
They yell at you to reset the shot clock.
Oh my, exactly. They're shouting at you and you have no idea what they're even saying, right? They're across the pool, so it's just a bunch of people in Speedos going like this. And then you're asking people to interpret for you, and then you do what they ask, but they're still bitching about it like that's the reason they lost. But the other thing is just having thick skin. People will blame everything but themselves for losing a game, so don't worry too much. There will be, I promise you, a veteran timekeeper, whether it be like me, Orion, Jamie. I'm going to count you as a veteran now because you were so diligent last year. There will be somebody beside you to help you figure out what should be the case. And even if all of you are flummoxed and people are just waving their arms at you like you've done something terrible, still pause, take a breath. You know what you do at that point? Wait for the referee. If it gets that bad, usually the referee comes over and kind of pats your shoulder and says, it's okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to press +1 to get the clock back here, right? If there's ever any matter of like fixing mistakes, like you accidentally let something run too long, this system will have a way to fix it. And the veteran timekeeper will help you fix it. Don't worry.
Is this like the most hated position? Like that everyone just kind of is like,
No.
screw that person.
Good point. But no, because more or less, this should be replaceable by a machine. So, good point. You know who they will bitch at relentlessly is the referee. I mean, the referee will garner a grudge. Yeah, so let the referee be the bad guy or girl, right? It's a good point. I don't want, even though you will get people shouting at you, it's a very temporary shouting, right? Because whatever they want, whatever it is, it might not be easy to understand, but whatever it is, it's possible for you to do. Sometimes they'll be mad at a referee for a call they made that it is not possible to undo, right? So, to answer Nan's question, it is a little high stress, but it's very short duration stress because anything you might mess up is fixable. And if it's like, oh, I feel like they shortchanged me 3 seconds, it's like, come on. If you thought you lost a game because you didn't have 3 seconds, nobody buys that. So I'd say let the referees take the heat for sure. Let the referees be your guide for sure. Let them be your shield for sure.
Okay, cool.
Just going on because we're only about 9 minutes left. I'm like, I hope I can get you done in 30 minutes, but no surprise, there's another ordinary foul that happens not a second later, literally like 2 seconds later. There's another ordinary foul. I hear one whistle. I see the ref's arm go up, so I stop the clock. I start it because almost immediately Spain throws the ball. Now this is interesting. If you watch the game and the clock starts counting down, I believe, like very briefly, this is where I'm talking about. If you watch the YouTube, the shot clock expands out. Like I've only got 5 seconds left. But then a big event happens. Now watch the whistle icon here. And notice which buttons you press here. And notice the title on the slide. It's no longer an ordinary foul. An ordinary foul is 1 whistle. An exclusion foul is going to be 2 whistles, and in my experience, it's usually followed by a 3rd whistle. So where an ordinary foul is like, brrr, an exclusion foul is like, brrr, brrr, brrr. And that 3rd whistle, the double whistles to get their attention and to make it clear that was an exclusion foul. Whatever somebody did, they are now excluded. And that 3rd whistle usually goes with the referee kind of pointing off, like, get out of here, right? And at that point, the referee signals which player they're having a problem with. Apparently, in this case, blue player 9 did something that was an exclusion foul. And again, I'm giving you more detail than you need as timekeeper, but just so you understand what's going on in the game, player 9 did whatever it is that caused an exclusion foul. The referee says, get out of there. And what that means for you is, first of all, you heard a whistle, so you do what? You stop the clock, right? No matter what type of whistle. That's what I'm trying to impress on us, right? Even if it's an exclusion foul, you're still going to stop the clock. But what's different about this time is, with an exclusion foul, the team that was fouled gets a new shot clock. So what second button do you press? Reset shot clock. And you see what happens to the shot clock. It gets bumped back up to 30 seconds. So you can start to get an understanding of water polo strategy, right? Getting an exclusion foul on you is lovely. Not only does the other team now have 1 less player, you've got a fresh 30 seconds, which is always why Steph and Jamie, during practice, when an exclusion happens, I shout at the top of my lungs, slow it back down, right? Now we need to bring it back and act like we've got a fresh 30 seconds, because we do. We do. We don't need to be acting like we've only got 2 seconds to shoot or lose the ball anymore. We need to now get our heads back on our shoulders and take advantage of the fact that we are now 1 player up. But for your timekeepers, the only difference here is you stop the clock and you reset the shot clock. Resetting immediately brings this number back up to 30, but it's not going to start counting down until you do what? Press start again. And you press start again according to the same rules. I skipped a slide, I'll go back to it in a second and explain myself. But the restarting part, exactly the same rules as before. And just to finish this off, since we've got 5 seconds left, I think we see our first goal. So what happens? Spain gets an exclusion foul. Spain is a woman up. Spain passes the ball, so we press start. The game goes on until, like another 9 seconds later, when what happens, shown in my little video here, someone attempts to shoot the ball. This is an important one I want to impress on us before we wrap up for the evening. Attempting to shoot is a reset shot clock event, no matter what happens to your shot. So you could completely miss. You could hit the goalie and the goalie knocks it out. You could hit somebody other than the goalie and they knock it out. You could hit the bar above the post and it bounces back into play. Doesn't matter what happens after you do it. If you attempt a shot, reset the shot clock. That's the other thing I want to really burn into our brains. That's the whole point of the shot clock, right? Once you take a shot, you get a new one. That's the whole point of it.
And that's a much more visual thing than audio.
It is, because someone attempting a shot, this is important, good call, Jamie. Someone attempting a shot, a referee does not whistle. What does a referee whistle usually signify? Some type of a foul. Attempting to shoot is no problem. So this is where you need to use your eyeballs, like Jamie said, A, and a little bit of your interpretation, but not much. Hopefully nobody's going to disagree about whether it was a shot or a pass in the direction of the goal. Right? I've never seen that happen. So if there's somebody moving the ball in the general direction of the goal, you'll know it was a shot, and I want you to immediately press reset shot clock. Now, to ask a few sort of theoreticals, why didn't we press stop? Because we didn't hear a whistle. I want it to be very straightforward, right? Press stop when you hear a whistle. We didn't hear any whistle, so I'm not pressing stop. I saw a shot attempt, so I pressed reset shot clock. Now, of course, you might be asking, well, what happened after the shot? That is a key question. And in this case, the player made the goal. So in this next video, you see what happens right after she shot. She made the goal. And if you make the goal, the referee will whistle. Notice the bright pink lines coming out of the whistle on my slide. And if the referee whistles, what do? You press stop. Now, was it a foul? No. But it was a stop event, right? So the referee's whistle helps us know that something happened that should stop the clock. Because the referee might have whistled if this white cap player completely missed the goal. Completely missed it and got way out of the field. That would have been a foul. The referee also would have whistled, and we also would have stopped the clock. So they made the goal. We stop the clock because we hear the whistle, and we do two other things. Reset shot clock, I do this right away because you might say, why are you going to reset the shot clock again? You just reset it. And it's like, yeah, but what if it counted down to 29 seconds? If it did, I'm still going to reset it because what's about to happen is the players reset at the middle of the pool. Now the blue caps have possession of the ball and it goes in the other direction. And do the blue caps deserve a fresh 30 seconds? Of course they do. Of course they do, right? So sometimes I'm pressing the reset shot clock button like 5 times just as a weird tick, right? Like 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Right? The point is that once you pressed it once, pressing it 5 times again doesn't matter that much, right? I reset the shot clock to make sure blue, when they get the ball and they start going in their direction, has a fresh 30 seconds. And while I call you all timekeepers, you do have one other job, and that is to track the score. So that's why, to conclude our presentation, you're going to press +1, and we found this very confusing last night. For whatever reason, +1 is on the bottom, -1 is on the top. But you're going to press +1. I'm going to have this labeled with masking tape that this is for the white cap team. I might even put masking tape up here that this is for the white cap team. And once you press +1, you'll see that increases the score 1, bringing the score to white 1, dark 0. As a side note, you see these caps showing up on here. I want to briefly talk about that in the last couple of minutes and then just open it up for questions because I think we reached the end. Then play restarts. So white team just scored a goal, right? Now I've moved the little yellow dot over to the dark team. They've got the ball. This time, you're just resuming after a goal. So you're not doing that swim off nonsense. The dark team just starts with the ball. So the moment the ref blows the whistle, game on, and you press the start button. That might be the only time you hear a whistle and you actually press start versus stop, right? But at this point, USA would start with the ball. The moment you heard that whistle, they start passing it to each other and making their way towards the white goal. So that's the end of what I wanted to track, I think, for this presentation. If you go to the annotated link, you'll see I go a lot further. So I think I do a couple goals in each direction, goal attempts. What if they miss the goal? What happens there? I talk a little bit about that. And then briefly to go back to why did I show these cap numbers? That's not so much for the timekeeper's benefit. That's more for the secretary. That's a separate training. But let me go back to when I first showed a cap. I first showed a cap when a player committed an exclusion foul. Unlike ordinary fouls, you have a limited number of exclusion fouls you can commit before you're kicked out of the game. How many is that? Jamie or Steph? 3. 3 strikes and you're out. Yeah. And an exclusion foul and a penalty foul, those are the same as far as this goes. So they're both lumped into something called a personal foul. And I think they're called personal fouls because, we make a note about you, the person who committed the foul. So I put this cap up here to show you The timekeeper doesn't care, just to be clear, right? So if you're pressing the timekeeper, it doesn't matter which player committed the exclusion foul at all. But the secretary does need to make a note about exclusion fouls. That is considered something remarkable from the secretary's perspective. So they put a row in the remarks section. They say blue. They say, first of all, at 7 minutes and 37 seconds, who, what, when, where, why, right? So at when, 7 minutes, 37 seconds, who, the blue-capped player number 9, did what? They committed an exclusion foul, and you just make a note of all that. For the timekeeper, an exclusion foul is interesting. I don't think we're going to need you all to do this. Last year, I don't think this was the case. But this is where the timekeeper does jump back in. How long are you excluded, right? How long do you have to sit in that penalty box before you're allowed to get back or sit in a substitute in your stead? It is not 30 seconds. Turns out it's only 20 seconds. And the way you know, so we can do some simple math, right? Like, I didn't really realize this fully even last year as I was teaching people how to time keep. If they're excluded at 7 minutes and 37 seconds, they're allowed back in at the latest as of 20 seconds after that. Right? Not 20 seconds of wall clock time, not 20 seconds of real time, 20 seconds of game time. Right? So we can do some math in our heads and find out that when our game clock reached 7 minutes and 17 seconds, player number 9 is allowed back in, or a substitute for player number 9.
Who normally weighs them in?
Typically the timekeeper, and I'm going to show you all flags that we have for this purpose. We've got one white flag to wave back in a white player. We've got one blue flag to wave back in a dark player. And then we've got like a yellow flag for like a brutality, which I hope we never see. But, Jaden's question is a good one, because I think our referees are good enough, God bless them, that they do this math in their heads. And you know, obviously the excluded player is going to be doing some of this math too, right? If you're excluded, you're chomping at the bit to get back in there. You probably have a sense of when you're going to get back in. The referee should also take note of when the exclusion happened. They're probably doing this math in their head. And when the referee sees 7 minutes and 17 seconds, last year my experience was they waved the player back in. But I'm just preparing you all, because while the timekeeper doesn't care who is excluded, they are officially in charge of when that excluded player is allowed back in 20 seconds later. And that is, unfortunately, the device doesn't help you with that, right? The moment you got to keep an extra little post-it note in your head saying, once it's reached 7 minutes and 17 seconds, I'm going to throw my flag. That's your official thing. I'm not sure we're going to need to do that. Exclusions weren't terribly common in our tournament last year. You know, amateurs don't go too crazy on each other. And when they happen, usually the excluded player knows what they're doing, and the referee usually knows when to wave them back in. So that's why I wanted to jump back to this slide, because that's a great point from Jamie. Officially, the timekeeper does keep track of that 20 seconds. You'll notice in my slide here, they're allowed back in before that 20 seconds if something else happens, like the ball changes possession or a goal is scored, which I think is what happens here. So there are some things that just blow up that 7 minutes and 17 seconds, right? And the player's allowed back in anyway. But the secretary would record player 9, the blue cap was excluded, just like the secretary would also record player 12 in the white cap scored a goal. So again, the timekeeper doesn't care. I'm putting this water polo cap on here just as a reference. But, you know, first of all, what both the timekeeper and the secretary need to get right is which team scored the goal, right? So we got to give the point to the white team. Let's at least be on the same page about that. And in this case, the secretary would note what? At 7 minutes and 24 seconds, player 12 from the white team scored a goal, bringing the cumulative score to 1-0. But we'll save secretary training for another meeting, and I'll just open it up now. We're 5 minutes past the hour. Any questions? That's really all I wanted to cover. Like I said, check out the annotated version. Just watch the video, right, as you're going to bed and be like, what if that happens? Do I know what to do then? It's really just about practice, right? Mental practice of, you don't even need this sheet in front of you. Mental practice of like, what would I do when blank?
Something that happened at the tournament, and I think it may happen as well. Talk about running the clock.
Yes, okay, so a side note that I mentioned in a few cases. So running the clock means we let this guy tick down. We let the game clock, 7 minutes and 24 seconds, tick down. We only start and stop the shot clock. So, why do you do that? We'll talk about why would you do that, and then how do you do that. Let's talk about how first, because that's very simple. It's, instead of pressing this red start stop, you press this white blue start stop. And I hope, to me that's intuitive, because it's like you press the start stop beneath the shot clock means you're only starting and stopping the shot clock, means presumably you are deliberately letting the game clock run down. And Jamie asked about it because this is something that happens. Maybe in other sports it's routine. In water polo, I think it happens in like corner cases, and these are two that might occur during our tournament. First, you're running way out of time, right? So real quick, just some math here. We got 6-minute quarters. 6 minutes times 4 is 24 minutes, right? I think we've got 1-minute breaks between each quarter. Except for the between a half, you get 2 minutes. So what is that? That's an extra 4 minutes. Let's just round up. That's 30 minutes. If everybody played exactly letting the game clock tick down the entire time. Does that happen? No. You were pressing start stop all over the place, right? So you add something like literally 50% to 80% more time with all this dicking around of fouls and stopping the clock and all that stuff. So you might reach a point where you're like, oh shit, this game is supposed to be over in 5 minutes. The next game's ready to start, and we've only got 7 minutes left on the game clock. We're guaranteed going to take longer than that. I'm going to call that like we're running out of time emergency, and when that happens, you simply do not stop the game clock. You only start or stop the shot clock. And doing it that way, you're sort of equally, how do I put it, punishing both teams, however you want to put it, right? You're not unfairly making the game clock only count down against one. That's the whole point, right? The game clock belongs to everybody. So you're sort of accelerating the game, which, however you want to put it, like punishes both teams equally. But you do still start and stop the shot clock so that each team kind of preserves their, you still need 30 seconds to shoot kind of a thing. So that's one scenario. We're running out of time. I don't believe that happened at all last year. I hope nobody's surprised. 30 minutes of game time plus an extra. Our games are 50 minutes long. 50, right? As in 10 minutes less than an hour. And then I do believe the next game starts immediately. We don't leave breaks in between games. So 50 minutes, 50 minutes, 50 minutes, lunch break, drag show, 50 minutes, 50 minutes, 50 minutes. And I don't believe last year we actually ended up going over or needing to run the shot clock for the reason I just said at all. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm about to say the next reason we might let the shot clock run down is what you might expect. If the score difference is like 10 or bigger, so let's say Spain was 12 and US still hadn't scored a single point. We all know what those games are, like blowouts, right? They're no fun for anybody. So those games,
It's the mercy rule.
there you go, mercy, right? Like nobody, the losers aren't having fun, the winners aren't having fun. So let's just speed this thing up. And even though we might have plenty of more time on our clock, in those cases, so the score difference is greater than 10 or more, you will switch to letting the game clock run down at all times and only starting or stopping. So you just switch the rules. You just press this white one instead of pressing this red one. I hope that's straightforward. And I hope the reasons why we would do that are straightforward. I do think it happened, but if that's a little bit nerve-wracking for you, remember, that's where a veteran timekeeper would probably come in and go, okay, we are now engaging with our blank rules, right? And I think it happened last year, but I think it happened seldom. And I'm glad for that, because I don't really want to put our timekeepers through that. I'd rather just have shorter quarters, right? Or better teams that are better matched, so we don't need a mercy rule. Thankfully, Orion is making our teams now, forming our teams now. And like I said, I think with 6-minute quarters and 50-minute games, your shit should wrap up within 30 minutes. So we've left you a pretty big buffer before you reach that 50 minutes. Go ahead.
I think it's actually more likely to happen the first day because the second day teams are matched up based on how they've done the first day.
That's a great point. You hear what Jamie's saying? First day we're getting, how many teams we got in total? Something like 8. So we're going to be matching up potentially the strongest team against potentially the weakest team. And even though we do our best to make teams evenly distributed, it's hard to know that before the fact, right? We're going to have some strangers showing up for this tournament. And we're glad to have them, but we don't know their skill level. So Jamie's right. On the first day, I think you're more likely to get these mismatches. And you're probably more likely to get the delays. So both reasons are likely to be triggered, right? Teams are just slow, they don't get their shit together, they're caught doing a bunch of fouls, or taking a long time to get the ball. So you might find we're running into a point where I think at that point the referees are gonna signal at you like, hey, let's let the game clock run. That's what they'll say, because we've only got minutes left or something, right? And probably Orion or me or Jamie would reiterate what that means. Or, like Jamie said, the teams are just poorly matched because it is the first day of the tournament. So you're going to get that 10-point score difference, and you're going to let the game clocks run for mercy. Whereas the second day, you know, it's the winners against the winners, so to speak. So it's less likely to be poorly matched, and everyone's eager to get the game done, so they're moving really fast. Okay, 10 minutes longer, but I don't mind at all. Thank you for the questions. Any other questions or comments? Come to practice. That's the other thing I'll just remind you. You don't need to. Don't take it that way, Nan. I know you're doing us a favor if you come or stay longer to a practice you wouldn't have otherwise come to. But I'm sure Jamie and Steph, speaking for myself, I definitely agree. Getting that hands-on experience is the best way to get your muscle memory trained and get those jitters out of being like, oh, there's all this noise, there's all this distraction. Like, what do I do? Just sitting down in front of the machine, which we will have at all of our practices until the tournament. So tomorrow night, Thursday, Sunday night, following Tuesday, and following Thursday. So 4 opportunities, if you can make it, to come and play. Mistakes are welcome. That's the whole point with your timekeeping equipment.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there tomorrow, and I could probably do Thursdays. So I could probably do this Thursday and next Thursday, because I do want to get some experience, and I am immediately going to watch this water polo.
I'm glad. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Any other questions? Thank you, everybody. This was great. Okay, cool. So I appreciate everyone coming. Have a great rest of your night, and let me know if questions. Just chat me on Spawn or shoot me an email. Thanks
Awesome.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.